Good morning. Today is the 27th of Cheshvan, the 12th of November. We are finally continuing our learning of the Maimer En HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ba B'Tlunim Briotav. God does not entrap His creations, His creatures. And we're going to go back a little bit. Not much. We're on page Kuf Pei Chet, which is 188. V'nei haratzon, you have it? V'nei haratzon, hu nimtza b'chol haguf b'shaveh. The will of the brain, of the nefesh, of the psyche, that starts from the brain, is spread out over the body equally.
You can't open the brain and take out the ratzon.
No, but that's where it's lodged. You can't take it out, but it's without a brain, there is no ratzon. There's nowhere to dwell. So you're right. As it says elsewhere, here where he's talking about the ratzon is the ratzon before it's lodged into the brain, before it dwells in the brain. And then the ratzon is really like the crown. Because it's like the crown, it envelops the entire body like a surrounding light, equally. It's only what? It's like a soiviv. It doesn't come from soiviv exactly. It's still memale, but it's memale that has a makif to it. All pnimi also has a makif, not just. In any case, and therefore, it acts on the foot the same way that it acts on the head. If you remember, what he's talking about here is, why does a person, when he wants to step into a very hot pool of water, first put his heel in, and not his head? Right? And we talked about this, that the Alter Rebbe used to, on purpose maybe, take a very, very hot shower on Shabbos Eve, and he would also make sure that the water for the head was much hotter. And he said the head can tolerate much hotter water than the rest of the body. I told you about this when we were learning last time. No, I said I did, but it's okay. So now, maybe I wanted to and I didn't. So I wanted to means that it wasn't a makif. It was waiting to dwell inside. So from that point of view, from that perspective, it seems that there's less life force in the heel than there is in the head, because he puts the heel in, not the head. So if that's true, how does this work with the will? The will is equally everywhere. There's no difference between the heel and the head. The will affects the foot the way it affects the head. And we see that the will, it affects the entire body equally. There's no delay. Now this is, like I said, we run into a problem here. Because today we know there's a delay. It's in microseconds, but there's a delay.
Yeah, but for all practical purposes.
No, it's not for all practical. It doesn't work that way.
Not like 10 minutes, half an hour.
It doesn't work that way. He said specifically that here he's talking about will that is not dwelling in the brain. If we were talking about the way it's dwelling in the brain, then the microsecond delay is true, because the brain takes time to carry the neural impulse all the way down to the foot, and it takes a longer time to do that than it does to move the head. The head is a few microseconds less because it's closer. It takes time to propagate through the nervous system. So here he's talking about something else.
As you get older, it goes slower.
What?
As you get older,
of course. If you have less of the sheath on the neurons, there's a lot of factors. By the way, it doesn't have to get slower. You know, if the analogy is electrical impulses, so we have this plain old telephone service, which is called PATS, all over the world. It's a twisted wire pair, which means two very, very thin simple wires. The coating is almost non-existent. It's like less than a millimeter of plastic around a very, very thin wire. And there's twisted pairs, there's two of them. And this was installed in most places. In America, it was installed in the 20s, the 30s of the previous century. And when internet started becoming a big deal, and they wanted to transfer a lot of information over this. So at first, it was, they called it 1200 baud, 1900 baud. They called it bauds, which was like bits per second. I don't remember where the baud came from. So for that, they didn't think there was a problem. This it could handle. It could somehow handle this. Right? But what happened when they got up to 44K, then they got up to 96K, and then they got up to 128K, and they're like, how far can we push this thing? And at some point they said, we're going to have to change all the wires in the United States, which is like so much money that there was no simple way to do it. So they said, forget it. We're keeping the twisted pair wire, the POTS. What we're going to do is we're going to make the signal so good that even if the POTS drops half of it, we'll still get it through. And that's what they did. They made the end instrumentation so good on both sides of it that they could go up to megabits without ever changing this twisted pair wire, which they never thought could go over 100K bits. And today it's doing 20 megabits, 50 megabits in some places. How did they do it? What's going on? Because you make the instrumentation at the end better. So even though objectively your nervous system gets weaker, if you have if your brain remains functioning properly, you'll be able to get over it.
No, but if you decide you want to get up.
Same thing, physically.
It takes longer.
That's muscles, all right. Maybe you don't have enough strength. But to get the impulse through is the same issue. It's a question of whether you have, if you continue to work on the instrumentation, you should theoretically be able to do almost the same as what you did when you were younger. Anyway, the bits per second in the nervous system is nothing. Literally nothing. I mean, we're talking about 100 bits per second. I think that's what nerves carry, which is almost like nothing. The amount of information is minuscule. The speed is also actually very slow, very, very slow compared to if you use wire. And so, we're slow beings actually. We're not even that fast. So you should be able to get over it. In any case, here he's not talking about all that. He's talking about the makif, the will, which is here from the crown. It's never dwelling inside the brain to begin with. It's something entirely different. So what are we talking about that there is this will? In any case, he doesn't explain it. It's explained in other places, he says. ולכן פועל על הרגל כמו על הראש, כשעולה ברצון לנענע ברגל תכף הוא מנענע בלי שום שהיות זמן, וזה מוכח שהרצון נמצא גם ברגל ומבואר במקום אחר. And so they used the fact that they couldn't see the delay as an example of it. As an example. But if it's a true makif, if it's a true surrounding light, it doesn't pass through any of the wiring in the body. It doesn't go through the nervous system. It's something else. אך הכוחות, שכל ומידות, but when you talk about the brain, the mind, intellect, and emotions, and נקראים כוחות פנימיות, which are called internal powers, or faculties, שכן מתלבשים כל אחד בכלי דווקא, which do enclose and garb within vessels. שם יש התחלקות ואינו בשווה בכל הגוף. There you have to say that there's a difference. And there you see the difference. Because the mind performs a completely different function than what the foot can. Right? The mind is able to think. The foot can't think. וכמו השכל מתלבש במוח שבראש דווקא. And we see that the mind engarbs in the brain, specifically in the head. שדווקא חומר המוח הוא ממוזג באופן כזה שהוא כלי לקבל בתוכו אור השכל. Because the matter, the gray matter of the brain, is made in such a way that it can serve as a vessel for the type of light that the intellect needs. מה שאין כן חומר כלי העין, הדרך מה שלא שערי עברים, אינם כלים לגילוי עושה. But the eye, even though it's very, very special, and certainly the other organs, cannot serve as a dwelling place for this type of light, for the light of the intellect, meaning the revelation of the power of intellect. What? Yeah, but it's made out of completely different matter. It's a completely different thing. When you say, as someone who studied anatomy, that or physiology, that it's part of the brain, what you mean is that it has a direct link. But it's not part of the brain. You take the eye out, you don't stop thinking. There's no neural connections there. And the heart is the place where the emotions dwell. Again, we talked about this. It's not that really the emotions dwell in the heart. It's that in the brain there's a representation of emotions occurring in the heart. So the vessel has to be made out of constituents, out of parts, made out of matter, and matter that has connections. Memuzag here means, what he's talking about here is that is basically what we would say molecular structure. The molecular structure has to be such that it can fit the type of operation, the type of light that you want to put into this vessel. And see elsewhere, which is interesting to find, where he talks about this, because I've been dealing with this topic lately. From the thickening of the light, the vessels were made. This is a very big topic. What does it mean? A thickening of the light, the vessels were made. Does it mean here that the brain is originally from the light of the intellect, and therefore it is formed in this way? Meaning the form that was put into the matter of the brain, that form is itself the light of the intellect. And there's a whole understanding like this in physiology and biology in general called form and function. That you can't divorce the two. You can't say that there was a function first, meaning a type of matter that was suitable somehow for this type of form. Sorry, I said it backwards. In English, it's the opposite. You can't say that there was a certain form of matter that was suitable for a certain function, and the body figured out how to use it for that function. The body can never figure out how to think with the hand. It can't. You can't add. So you have to say that the form itself is already built, constituted, based on the function that it's going to, which is a very big problem for evolution, by the way. Yeah. It's a huge problem for evolution. It pulls the rug from under it. Because you say there has to be a plan before you can actually make something. So that's what's called intelligent design. They tried to say that this was one of the reasons why they came up with intelligent design. Again, I completely dismiss evolution on mathematical grounds. It simply doesn't hold any water. There's not enough time to do what evolution claims that happened, even if we had an infinite amount of time. You would have to have basically Greek time, ancient Greek time, which is that matter existed forever. And you basically need forever in order to get to the complexity that we have now. So you have to have, another solution was punctuated evolution, all kinds of different ideas how to get over that problem with time, because there's simply not enough time to randomly come up with what we have now. But intelligent design says something like this, that the design was what forced the matter to form the way it did. And it was already built for that particular design. Okay, in any case. ומאחר שהם כוחות המתלבשים בכלים בפנימיות, ממילא מוכח שיהיה התחלקות ואינו בשווה בכל הגוף. And since here we're talking about what we call inner faculties, meaning inner light that fills, so and therefore it engarbs within the vessels, there must be differentiation between the vessels, differentiation between the light, and it's not equal in the entire body. ולכן כוח השכל שלו, כוח היותר נעלה, הוא במוח שבראש דווקא שם מאיר בגלוי, אבל בגוף אינו מאיר בגילוי, כי אם המידות שהם הולדת המוחין מאירים בגוף, וידוע דמהות מוחין ומהות מידות הם שלא בערך זה לזה כלל, ומחבר בכמה דוכתי. And therefore we have to say that when we're talking about the light that engarbs in the body, there is a huge difference between the mind, the intellect, and the emotions. They're not the same at all. And where one is, the other can't be. They don't mix. And because of that, the way that they enliven the body is in completely different ways. So that's the difference. Yeah, but it rules over it, but it can't be in it. I mean, you can't think with the heart. You won't be able to think with the heart. You can rule over it, like the brain is supposed to be able. Exactly, that's the point. That the brain is able to rule over every single organ in the body. By the way, Mach Shalit was a huge understanding, because even if you would say, according to the Shita, it's a saying from the Zohar, it's not anywhere else. Even if you would say that somehow the Zohar was written in the 13th century, there was no one, as far as I know, that in the 13th century postulated that the center of thought or the center of everything in the body is in the brain. They still believed it was in the heart or the kidneys. But I don't believe that in the 13th century anybody thought that. All the more so that we know that the Zohar is definitely, even if it was documented in the 13th century, it doesn't really matter, that it's from teachings of from the 2nd century and 3rd century. To know then, to understand then that the brain is the most powerful organ in the body, that it controls everything else, is a watershed moment. It's like everything changes the moment you understand that. Okay, let's end, because I have to go.